Why, hello, Internet! It's been a while. My name is Prunk, and today we are going to be talking about Enemy of Justice. Now, this set launched of May of 16th of 2006 and included a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX favorites, or character favorites, such as Alexis, Aster Phoenix, Jaden, Zane, Amnal, Animal, Anal, that weird hippie professor guy, or the Professor Banner, yeah, as Americans call him. Now, this set was great in terms of getting new archetypes like the Destiny heroes and counter fairies and cyber cards. Think Alexis could like at least try to be a good duelist. What are these? So, how do these impact the meta? Well, as you assume, they didn't. Diamond Dude was the fetch card here, and he was a powerhouse. And Cyber Phoenix could be played, but usually just in Cyber Dragon decks, and he was okay. Not really meta warping. Banisher of the Radiance was a good side deck card, as well as like Macrocosmos. Like there were some decent cards in this set overall, but nothing too crazy, at least for now. But the whole point of the show is let's take a look at some of these archetypes that just didn't get the love and support that they need, and let's see how we can fix them. So let's talk about the Destiny heroes, because they're probably the most important and most impactful, and most people don't watch my videos all the way through anyways, so we're going to go with the best stuff first, and hopefully it'll intrigue you enough for the later stuff. Captain Tenacious basically requires another D hero to have died the previous turn while this card was already on the field, meaning he has to basically survive a normal summon, and then you have to wait for him to be able to special summon another D hero when it dies, and it's just all this for what? To have two really low stat Destiny heroes onto the field? I mean, like, honestly, Giant Germ basically does this card better just to have endgame two characters on the field. I, it just takes less work to just play Giant Germ instead. Now, Dreadmaster is the deck's boss at this point, but it's a dead draw, and if you're lucky, like having two Destiny hero dudes, this guy could possibly be a 2800 beat stick if you manage to summon like the two Destiny hero dudes from the graveyard with this effect, but that's usually pretty low. Clock Tower, I like the idea behind this card, but it just doesn't really fully support the Destiny hero archetype overall. And I think this is kind of where we can focus our fixes on in order to make this a much more playable card for the entire archetype and not just for summoning out Dreadmaster. So let's start with this one. Now, for those who are not familiar with these random Destiny hero cards back in 2006, let's read Clock Tower. Once per turn, during your opponent's standby phase, place one clock counter on this card. While there are 4 or more clock counters on this card, you do not take battle damage. Wabaku, yeah! If this card with 4 or more clock towers is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, special summon one Dreadmaster from your hand or deck. Okay, so it doesn't actually do anything until a 4th standby phase, and then at that point, your random Destiny hero weak monsters then can't take battle damage. Cool. And then you have to basically MST your own card or of some sort to trigger this effect to special summon the Dreadmaster from your deck. That's all really, really slow, bad, not really fun, and never going to see play whatsoever in any kind of competitive. And honestly, even the casual format, this just wasn't good. There's just so many better ways you can go around and get this like essence of this effect and give the archetype something cool. Now, keep in mind, we are fixing these cards in the context of 2006, so we do want to be careful about power creep, and we do want to kind of make it so it fits around that same kind of power level for that era. But we're going to play around with the idea of the standby phase, making it through time, and that's kind of what the whole Destiny Hero engine is going to be about, is about playing around with that standby phases. So let's try this out. During each player's standby phase, place one clock counter on this card and pay 500 life points. Your Destiny Hero monsters do not take any battle damage. So the reason I wanted to put this kind of effect in is you're taking 500 points, you have Destiny Heroes on the field, they're all relatively weak, so it's kind of like a Messenger of Peace or some kind of like a little bit of stall. You don't take the battle damage from those cards, but they can be destroyed. So it's just a way to kind of trigger out their effects and make this card more useful while not just being an infinite stall card. During either player's main phase, you may destroy this card and summon a Destiny Hero monster from your hand whose levels equal to the amount of clock counters on this card. This effect is a quick effect, and this set does introduce a few different quick effect card effects in this. So we're starting to get into that era of, okay, wait, we're playing on my opponent's turn a little bit more now. And I think this card kind of fits that theme. It's kind of like a ticking clock, and I like this idea. So this is both a buff and nerf to this card, but it does make it significantly more playable for the future and present. It no longer special summons from the deck, and still you have this card effect that's going to be able to bring out any kind of monster, and not just relying on this Destiny dude that you may or may not want to play in the future. This card now becomes a really big staple for playing Destiny heroes. You can summon out any of these Destiny hero cards. And since the clock counters are triggering on either player standby phase, you're now getting these clock tokens a lot faster. But if we want to summon out Dreadmaster, this card has to sit on the field for about 4 standby phases, meaning that you can bring out your Dreadmaster after about 4 turns. That's a big payoff that you're kind of relying on. If this card's just sitting in your hand for 4 turns, it may feel slow and clunky, but we want to make sure that there is a payoff for it overall. And the fact that you can summon it on your opponent's turn can possibly stop some OTKs or just save you from losing the game. If you need to summon it out a level 4 or something else, you can do so after about 2 turns. But playing 1 copy of this card, or even if you're playing 3, you're going to be able to summon out Destiny heroes from your hand a little bit faster. And later on, we do get more Destiny heroes with higher costs that this card can cheat out when you draw into them. So I think there's a lot of different ways that this card can be more useful. I just think that it is significantly more playable, even though it's gotten a slight nerf. But because you can't special summon from your deck, but it takes 4 turns to get into it. You don't have to trigger it. It's going to gain counters every turn. And if somebody did have MST, for example, on your opponent's side of the field, they try and MST this card, and you have 4 clock counters, and you have a level 4 in your hand, you can still special summon. It's going to be a quick effect, so their MST does destroy this card after it destroys itself to summon out another monster. So now it does avoid removal spells a little bit more if you have a Destiny Hero monster in your hand. So you're always going to get some kind of value, or you're most of the time going to get some kind of value out of this card. And your opponent destroying it early just means that you're not going to be able to bring out a big level 8 Destiny Hero card in comparison. So this card becomes a lot more future proof because we now have you summon any kind of Destiny hero and not just the Dreadmaster. But I do want to make Dreadmaster pretty cool. But first, let's talk about some other niche effects that we can kind of go over. Captain Tenacious. This card is pretty bad normally. Let's read it. Once per turn, during your standby phase, you can target 1 Destiny hero monster in your graveyard that was destroyed by battle since your last standby phase. If you controlled this face-up card when the target was destroyed, and special summon it. This card has to sit on the field and watch something die at a really weak stat line and then survive to special summon something else. So it's an extremely slow Call of the Haunted. I don't really like the theme. I don't think it fits the theme. And so we can play around without changing too much of this card just to kind of give it some synergy with this archetype. And so we could say something like, while this card is on the field, each time a Destiny hero monster you control is destroyed, place 1 clock tower or token on the clock tower you control. So you can run a weaker Destiny hero into something or trade with something. It gets destroyed. You get an extra Destiny hero token. And then on your main phase, you can summon out a bigger Destiny hero just to kind of help speed up the clock a little bit more, which is, I think, pretty neat. And we can still kind of keep its original effect of during your standby phase, if this card is on the field, you can special summon 1 Destiny hero monster that was destroyed since your last standby phase. So it still gets that special summoning effect, but it has somewhat of a little bit more of a instant gratification effect if we need to. Now, ideally, though, what we want to be able to do is bring out somebody like Doomlord coming up. Doomlord says, once per turn, you can target 1 monster your opponent controls, banish that target. You cannot declare an attack the turn you activate this effect. You must control this face-up attack position card to activate and resolve this effect. The banished monster returns on the opponent's side of the field on your second standby phase after activation. So making this work with Clock Tower, if we keep the same effect and just make it a quick play, it can be a lot of fun. Being able to, on your opponent's turn, summon out Doomlord, banish something before they go into their battle phase, so that way they can't trade over certain things, especially because your guys are weaker. I think that's a really cool way that we can make this guy feel like a Doom Lord, but we can still keep that second standby thing. So it just allows Doom Lord to be a more defensive card on both players' turn and allows you to push your advantage. The only downside I really have is it introduces the early quick play stuff a little bit more than I want to, but we do have card effects that already have the quick play stuff that have been out for this set already. So I don't think this is a bad card. I actually think this card would be extremely good, and it's something that you could tech into almost any deck at this time period. So I think this can kind of fit in with like, hey, Destiny Hero Dude is a good tech card for a lot of decks. Well, I think Doomlord can actually be a good tech card for any deck too. It doesn't have to play it in theme. It just allows you to quick play banish, and it's almost like a quick removal, almost like a Fairy Lily. If we wanted to kind of remove like the quick play effect, we could probably do something like when this monster is destroyed by battle, or card effect, banish one monster your opponent controls during the standby phase, return that banished monster back to the field. That way it's kind of like a temporary DD Warrior Lady, but I think that's actually kind of bad. I mean, like you don't take the battle damage for it, and you can special summon it off of the Captain Tenacious effect again. So it can be a kind of a recurring DD Warrior Lady. So that's kind of nice, but I think the original effect just nothing super overpowered, and just being a nice clean removal effect that you can allow you to swing into something or swing into an empty board and help close out some games. And finally, let's talk about Dreadmaster. If this card is special summoned by Clock Tower Prison, destroy all monsters you control except Destiny Heroes. Also, after that, you can special summon up to 2 Destiny Heroes from your graveyard. After this card is special summoned for the rest of the turn, Destiny Hero monsters you control cannot be destroyed. Also, you take no battle damage when they battle. The attack and defense of this card are equal to the combined original attack of all other Destiny Heroes you control. So this card's bad. It only gets its effect when summoned by Clock Tower, which means it's a completely dead card in your hand 90% of the time. I really want to reinforce the benefits of the Clock Tower Prison, though, as if it like because it was an important card in the show. So we're going to push that lore and see what we can kind of do to clean up Dread a little bit. So what I want to do is, if this card is special summoned by Clock Tower Prison, destroy all monsters on the field. This kind of makes it a big board wipe, and it's a countdown clock of this is a telegraph. This guy's about to summon an 8 because he has 8 Clock Tower tokens. So it's going to cause some dread. I kind of like that idea of like, I know a board wipe is coming. I don't have a way to deal with it. Maybe I just don't commit anything to the field and let it hit the field. Now, this card gains 1,000 for each monster destroyed by this effect. We're removing the free special summons because this guy's just breaking out of prison, and it doesn't really make sense that he brings a bunch of random Destiny heroes along with him because they're not really being imprisoned. I think this just makes a little bit more sense. This guy's not bringing out goons with him. And just giving him the stat boost alone, if it kills 2 cards, he's a board wipe, which does 2,000 to 3,000 damage. You're sacrificing your own D heroes now to give him a boost to clear out the opponent's board. So like if you do have 2 of the weaker Destiny heroes on the field, then you're 2,000, and let's say they have 1 card set, then that's 3,000. So it can be a pretty big card. It does take about 4 turns of this guy to be summoned out, and he doesn't do anything in your hand still. So he can still be a dead card overall. The only other thing I would consider is that this card just has a straight baseline stats of like maybe he's a 2,500. So that way, if you can't trigger out Destiny Hero, this card's not completely dead. He can just be level 8 2,500 attacker or a 3K attacker or something. And that way you can still tribute summon him if you need to. But again, this kind of comes into play of maybe we should have the red cards. Maybe we should have cards that need special conditions from the extra deck that they won't be a brick, and this is just a special conditioned summon card. So I like that idea overall, but if we're not changing up the whole Yu-Gi-Oh format and introducing red cards, then I think this is completely fine. He is losing the effect of Destiny Heroes cannot be destroyed with his condition as well. So there is a lot of ways that they can just get hit by trap cards on summon, so that way you're still protected. He's a board wipe. He's basically a dark hole on legs, but he's now vulnerable when he comes out of the tower. So like, okay, he's telegraphed of, I know this card is coming out. I'm not going to put a monster down on the field and watch it get blown up by this guy. But instead, I have some trap cards, and I'm going to have to make sure I use a trap card to remove this guy as soon as possible. So overall, there's some buffs and nerfs to him, but I do think him being easier to summon and being a much more impactful when he hits the field can actually allow Destiny Hero archetype to actually do some fun stuff. All right, wardrobe change. So, counter fairies. As they stand right now, they are pretty playable. I mean, like, they're not meta defining, but they were played and they do get better in the future, so there's not much to really fix, but I do want to talk to them a little bit. Bountiful Artemis is really what makes the deck good, and the Heralds of Green and Purple Light, they're great hand traps to fill the graveyard and negate some problematic cards. But what I really want to talk about is Layered the Liberator. So let's read her out. Each time a counter trap card is activated, immediately after it resolves, add 2 of your banished fairy monsters to your hand. So to me, this doesn't really make too much sense. And I say that because you're not trying to get your fairies into the banish zone in the first place. In fact, if you're playing like Macro Cosmos or something else, you can't even discard these cards for cost. So I don't quite understand where this card is coming from and how you really play around it to get your hand recovery. So here's my pitch that can make this a lot more of a consistent engine. Whenever a counter trap card is activated, banish a fairy monster in your graveyard to add a fairy monster to your hand. It's now a +1 instead of +2, but it's so much easier to like obtain, making the viability of this card just way better. It also allows you to fuel your banish with other cards later on, but not require yourself to play like Macro Cosmos in the deck. It also feels like Miraculous Descent, which is another fairy support card in this set. So I think the synergy is just much more there, having this card removing stuff from your own discard pile to the play and still recovering back one of them. So you're not going infinite on resources. You still have to banish one to gain one. But I like this a lot better, and I feel like it's much more playable. So now let's talk about the Cybers. So specifically Prima, Tuda, and Gymnast, which are all Alexis's cards. Cyberblader was printed in Elemental Energy, and we didn't talk about it because it's not a bad card, but lacks some identity for that archetype. But I can give it a pass because it's at least playable. But the other 3 are just so boring. Other than TuTu, which allows you to swing directly, and that's a more unique effect that we could play with, and we haven't really seen that since Metal Raiders, I think, where we had all the tiny critters attacking directly. So I like that. It's pretty cool. We can support that with the other 2 cards. Cyber Gymnast now reads, once per turn, when a monster you control attacks an opponent directly, will they control a monster increase their attack by 1,000 during damage calculation only. So this is kind of help supporting up TuTu so that way you can actually get some direct hits in and make it really meaningful, which I think is kind of neat. I mean, if you compare that to like the original effect of once per turn, you can discard 1 card, then target 1 attack position monster your opponent controls and destroy that target. I mean, isn't that just a like worse tribe infected virus of something because it has to be in attack mode? I'm glad that we can do something to kind of change this up and at least give these guys a theme. But now these cards actually feel like a dance unit in a way. That's kind of what Alexis wants of their like that team synergy. Prima, who has a Monarch effect to destroy all face-up spell cards in the field, can be changed to something like when a monster you control attacks an opponent directly while they control a monster, you may destroy a face-up spell or trap card on the field. So again, allowing you to kind of attack directly and hitting some back row while supporting the person who is hitting everything directly. What's really cool is this kind of combo allows you to play cards like Messenger of Peace and other stall cards to like protect TuTu, and now these guys all have some nice synergy amongst each other. So I think this is going to wrap up Enemy of Justice. A lot of these cards do see some play in the future. A lot of these cards kind of stick around for a very long time in the side deck, but we want archetypes. There's just a couple big misses here that I think are sad because how many people got excited over Destiny Heroes and thought they were cool in the show and then noticed that they were unplayable at the time? Counter Fairies I like a lot as an engine. I think this is the good steps that it could have taken to make a really strong archetype right out the gate. And who knows what that would have done to the meta of just giving them a little bit more recursion. I think we could have possibly seen fairies in the meta. I mean, even like the cyber cards at least now have something going for them where you can make a fun little engine. And if they're all commons, then somebody's going to make a fun, like, non-competitive deck out of it. Like, I think all these just got some more identity, and I consider it all fixed. If you guys like this kind of content and want to see more, please like, subscribe to all the YouTube stuff, and I will catch you all next time. Peace out.